or record?
Yeah, sure. One sec.
Okay. Cheers, thanks. So maybe start with a brief sort of sync up from the various teams. And then I thought maybe we could talk a bit about the NIM simulation numbers. And then Jeff put together this document in terms of layers. And Lewis is not here, so we can probably skip the console client WeChat stuff. Is there anything else people would like to talk about? All right, cool. Oh, and welcome to the fourth messaging for Web3 call for everyone tuning in to YouTube. So maybe let's start with the sync up. Jeff, do you want to start?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you want to start with sort of a brief diff from last 2 weeks?
Oh, okay. So sorry, talking about layering things or our
just general, yeah, like.
Okay, so we haven't. The main thing the main thing that I've done since last week was this layering document. One of the things I'd like to know. One of the things I realized in writing it was that the amount that I know about some of the higher level layers, like the data sync. I mean, I knew I didn't know this, but I didn't really realize quite how much I didn't know it. There's a bunch of, at the higher level layers, there's a bunch of very conditional things like, well, maybe this is related to this or whatever. So the more details is in the actual mixnet itself. Yeah, let's see, I think I pulled this up already. Yes, I did. So, yeah, anyway, so this tries to structure sort of what are the questions. Most of these things have come up at our other meetings, but they don't, but this hopefully puts it in more the ordering where we can figure out who's doing what, and who has to talk to each other, which seems to be the main concern that Sebastian voiced last time. And it seems completely reasonable. So yeah, okay, yeah. So that's the main thing. So one thing I will be doing this month, I'll be trying to write up a much better description of our incentivization strategy, which differs from the Validity Labs one. But I mean, it's already on the GitHub, but we'll try and do a better write-up soon. That's more because of conference deadlines than anything else. Then what other else? So we still haven't decided definitively I still haven't decided whether to go to the MLS meeting in Berlin or not. Can anybody else tell me if they're going?
We have Igor from Status going.
Okay. And you guys are thinking about funding one of the INRIA researchers, yes?
Jared, do you want to? I'm going to put you on the spot here, but do you want to speak briefly to that?
Well,
all right.
In general, I'll say that's great, because if we can use that as an opportunity to sort of make sure that, you know, there's somebody who really knows the thing, who's very much on the same page as us, then that's wonderful. Anyway.
Oh, cool. Should we go through the rest of the teams, and then we can talk about the layering stuff in more detail?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Victor?
Yes. So Luis has done a lot of work recently to write up this proposal, this structure for the group chat using PSS and feeds, and we would very much like to put more emphasis on how it's related to all this, like Mixnet and MLS. So we would like to kind of go through it in that light, and and see how these things can be combined. And Luis also wanted me to mention that we kind of thinking of another way to secure more anonymity. Is basically to have, I guess, a service network for relaying requests. So it's a bit vague at the moment, but it's something like using the PSS messages to basically ask random other nodes to fetch feeds or send PSS messages, and therefore it's basically implementing some sort of extra mixing if that's needed for the level of security. So the idea is to somehow combine the benefits of rooted messaging and its efficiency with some sort of darkness as a result of not having the possibility of traffic analysis easily. So we're going to work out a bit of the assumptions and possible attacks and see how we fare. It's a bit immature state, this research, but Luis already started writing the protocol specification for the group chat application. And I think he was also in touch with you, Oscar, right? I think you guys are coming to the. So I don't know who here can come to the Swarm Summit, because the Swarm Summit we're gonna host a messaging workshop. We really hope that Oscar and Luis can elaborate on the potential.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm coming, and Jacek is coming as well.
That's brilliant. Very good. So let's hope that by then we can reach a bit more clarity on how we can support each other's work.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Cool, thanks. I guess from our side, we've been sort of working on this. Minimal viable data synchronization proof of concept in Go, and sort of playing around with it for sort of our console client, which is like a wrapper around sort of our existing protocols and so on. And we have a basic simulation working. There's some kinks to work out and so on. And then we have a few more sort of some things we have to look into a bit more carefully. So these are things like when it's large group chats, how dealing with sort of mostly offline, more offline sort of devices, and how we can leverage sort of Swarm or other high uptime stuff. And we've also been looking into a bit more Dispersy and Tribler, which uses these sort of Bloom filters and so on for synchronization. And the goal with that is figuring out to what extent it's needed for a minimal version of data sync versus something that we can add and upgrade to later. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but we also started writing up this sort of minimal requirements for data sync. Sorry?
Diversity in what? I didn't quite understand. It cut out.
Dispersy, maybe? It's
okay, dispersion. Okay, okay.
Yeah, Dispersy, Trouble and so on. Because they have some pretty neat sort of constructs for data synchronization based on sort of this social friend of friend kind of thing. But one concern there is to what extent it's something that we could add on if you wanted to, because it also sort of has similar problems to this untrusted node sync stuff. So we're still trying to figure out what that interface will look like exactly and to what extent it's needed for a minimal version of data sync. We also have these minimal requirements. Dean, do you have a link to them? I don't know if we talked about them last time. I don't have it in my history. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I do. Wait.
Right. So, yes. So these are sort of properties requirements that we want sort of this layer to have to sort of support. So the first is that is to be able to sync data reliably between devices, sort of dealing with out of order dropped messages and all this basic stuff, and not relying on any centralized services for reliability. So this is a big one from considering our current setup with Whisper and so on, with mail service and so on. And then sort of allow for mobile friendly usage, potentially use some sort of helper service to get higher availability, have the ability to provide cache consistency, supporting sort of ephemeral messages that don't need replication, and then allowing it for sort of things like exploding messages and extreme data loss, and then sort of being agnostic to whatever transport is running on. So we can talk more about that later if people want to. What else? And then we also been continuing sort of moving away from our current multicast setup to device-based sync. That's still a work in progress. There's a bunch of kinks to work out because we are multi-device and all these kinds of things. But that would allow us to have protocol negotiation. And then, yeah, gonna sort of continue with the sort of Bloom filter, looking into that and see to what extent that's sort of useful for the minimal version, and then also look into the Swarm stuff and prepare a bit for that. Sort of look into Lewis group-based approach and so on, because I think there's a mobile app, and then continue to work out kinks and hopefully get a minimal version out fairly soon. Dean, did I miss anything?
No, you pretty much covered everything I've been doing.
Cool. All right, Harry.
Yeah. So just wait a second. So we're having a team meeting day over in the MixNet. So I'm here. Claudia, could you say hello? Claudia Diaz. So Claudia Diaz here, who's a MixNet researcher who knows Jeff, who's going to be working on the MixNet stuff. And I'll just give you a brief update, which is I think the next agenda item, which is the simulation stuff. Anya may or may not be able to dial in today. She knows about the meeting, but she didn't have much heads up, so she may or may not be able to make it. Effectively, I think the main thing we're interested in is the simulator does work. We're going to try to get some basic graphs of the simulator by next week, but we're not sure how many transactions. I mean, we know status is still like a work in development, and Ethereum, but how many transactions like per second are you imagining, or let's say messages per time tick, are you expecting to be like successfully delivered? I think that's one question we kind of need to know.
Well, if I may, I think ideally, even a slightly more fine-grained information would be what's the number of users and what's the average number of messages that users send per day or time period.
Yeah, so I think you some of that in GitHub, but where did it? Can you resend the link really quickly into the notepad?
Yeah, sure. So I've added some. Let me see here.
So yeah, what's the user population and their rate of sending?
So you can be both like current and projected users. That's fine.
So we sent size of packet, minimum, maximum size, how fast are they sent, how often are they sent, and how many clients. Those are the questions we answered.
Yeah.
Okay, could you resend that link really quickly?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
It's in the Zoom chat.
Oh, the Zoom chat. Okay, cool. Sorry, I was looking at it.
Yeah, I'll add it to.
Add to the notes real quick, just so we have. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we'll try to get you something by next week. I'm sorry, it's not. We've had a lot of kind of organizational questions we've been dealing with as we've onboarded Anya and other people.
40 per minute.
Yeah,
that's quite a lot.
That's a lot, but we can see if we can do it.
And how many people? How many clients? 1 million. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we'll give you numbers based on those, and those numbers are, how should we say, they're big. So you're both wanting a lot of messages per second, basically, and you're imagining lots of clients. But we'll see if it can handle it, and we'll give you an update on that next week, and we'll hopefully have a graph that shows you the sort of trade-off with assuming I think that we're going to assume the other thing, which we kind of want to know, is we need to understand how many nodes do you actually imagine participating in the system as relaying the nodes and mixing them. Does that make sense? For example, like in a very simple mixnet, we actually, like the Katzmann Post one, we only have 6 mixing nodes. We imagine you guys will have many more, and you want more nodes to carry effectively. Are you imagining many low capacity nodes, like in a classic computer?
Yeah, I think philosophically speaking, like we would prefer as many nodes as possible. And then that's a question of like, so for example, the amount of users is based on similar applications as well as sort of budget and general sort of app thinking, so on. And then I guess the second question is, what's the proportion of those active users that actually run a node? And ideally, as many as possible. So if you can do it with desktop nodes, that would be useful. Of course, we realize that you might not be as useful as a dedicated node if you have poor uptime, but hopefully that's at least the way I imagine it. That's something.
I think from an anonymity standpoint, it's not necessarily the best configuration when everybody is relaying messages. You probably would have to have immense latency to have decent mixing there. So there are trade-offs to be considered, and we can look at what the trade-offs are for different orders of magnitude. So, for example, how does it look like when we have like 10 mixes or 100 or 1,000? But I wouldn't go to something close to 1 million or half the people are running a node, because that's going to be extremely inefficient to have good mixing.
Yeah. So
I think that
the traffic is too thin. So many
like
people.
a service-orientated topology. So in the current structure, we have a few different of the semantics that are mixed together. I think realistically, there's probably going to be a small subset of nodes who are actually participating in the mixnet. But then like every other node will be participating in, say, data synchronization.
Yeah. I mean, basically traffic is too thin. If you have too many peers, it's too thin and it doesn't mix properly. So you also don't want to be too centralized. So there's like some sweet spot in the middle range where you have decent configuration and still decent distribution.
So what we might do, why don't we do like a log simulation where we say like 10, 100, 1,000.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. It's like 10, 100.
And then we'll try to find a sweet spot for numbers that look reasonable. And I don't think the reasonable number will be 1 million people running a mixed node, 1 million people messaging, but there's probably some reasonable number in the middle which we'll be able to find for you. Okay, just so you know.
I agree. I mean, I think some proportion of that, like if it's 1,000, 10,000, or even if it's 10 or 100, but it would be useful to see that curve, that trade-off between, say, 10 and 10,000, because you guys have an intuition for that. I don't personally have that. So if we can see that explicitly, that would be useful.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry it's not working, but we've just had some organizational stuff. We had to onboard Anya and stuff. And so what will happen is in the next meeting, Anya, who's been leading the simulator work, will probably join the meeting to walk through the results of the simulation. Okay. I'm sorry. We're hoping to do it this meeting, but I missed the last meeting and things have been really hectic and busy. So
Not at all.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. But we've basically been working on the mixed node. We're very, very, very interested in reviewing just incentivization stuff. We've been thinking about incentivization ourselves a bit. I think it's more or less compatible with Jeff's thinking, but we would like to know. We'll also try to write ours down, but if Jeff's already written his down, that would be great. Right now, I guess the main news from our front, so I'll put both hats on. From the NIM front, onboarded Anya successfully, onboarding a bunch of Dave, a bunch of coders who are like really world class. So I think we'll have some really good Go people for your Go people to talk to. That's useful. In terms of the MLS effort, there is, to my knowledge, no Go implementation, so one is still very much welcome. I will probably not be making the MLS workshop, but Karthik, Prasad, and Benjamin Berdu should be there, and they're the guys who, Prasad is interested in the concurrency stuff, and Benjamin's the editor of the spec, and Karthik is the master of all of the crypto. It mostly came from him. So the combination of those three will be able to answer any implementation questions you have. I do want to point out that MLS, DAGs and trees are basically the same thing, but it is still kind of tree thinking, because it's not exactly like messages can go up and down the tree, right? So that's a little, I just looked at the notes. I noticed that the reason it's a tree is because you can send messages up to group, the updates go both up to group state and back down to group state, and they go back down in the co-path to the tree group state. So just to point that out, but it's still basically a DAG. I don't think it really matters. But we just need to be able to send messages in both directions for you to layer MLS on your data synchronization stuff. Okay. Just noticing that. I'll try to write that down properly, but I may not have time.
I have a question on the Go implementation. So I saw there was some sort of Go code bases. Are they sort of partial or not? Or what's the state of?
Oh, no one knows. There hasn't been too much. There hasn't been too much interop testing. So that's the point of the meeting.
I see. So it's about interop and not, because you mentioned there was no sort of Go implementation.
Well, maybe there's no, like, I think the official input. So what INRIA is working is on a formally verified implementation, and this kind of meta language called F* that compiles down to C.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the editors have a JavaScript and Java implementation. That's what Cisco is working on and what Mozilla is working on effectively. Does that make sense? Because Mozilla is going to imagine, what Mozilla's goal for this is that MLS be running as a chat client inside their browser. So future versions of Mozilla will include an MLS chat client. Do you know who's made the Go code base?
Dean, do you know, because you looked into this? I saw there's one by Richard Barnes.
Oh, maybe Richard made his own. Okay, well, cool. Well, if Richard's working on the Go code base, then that means the Go code base, because Richard's an editor, and so Richard occasionally does stuff off standard, but Richard's pretty strict about following standards. So rather than recode it yourself, you should probably meet Richard. Richard will be at the MLS meeting, and Richard, I'm sure, would be happy to help you guys work on his Go code base. The only issue with Richard is that Richard does work for Cisco, so Richard may not understand or be sympathetic to some of the peer-to-peer stuff, but just in terms of explaining the MLS code and how he got it working, Richard is excellent. Sorry, I thought he was doing Java for some reason.
It might be an old implementation, because the last up to this C was a while ago. I don't know, Dean, do you know more detail, because you started looking into this?
Most of the implementations that I saw in Go were like pretty old.
Okay.
Months ago, last updated.
Okay, yeah, they might. Yeah, this is why it's useful to get one of the missions for Igor, the MLS stuff, and I'll also just ask Richard and Karthik and Benjamin, maybe today or tomorrow. So the problem is with the spec. This is just how standardization works. Is that there is a gap between the spec and the code, but we're trying to keep at least one or two code bases spec compliant. So I know the F* code base and the Java base and the JavaScript code base are spec compliant. I suspect the Go code base may be just out of date a bit, but it's not going to be a big deal to update it. The spec hasn't changed that dramatically in the last few months. So.
All right, cool.
And also, the Federation spec, which is, you guys will find a bit disappointing. Google put out a draft implementation spec, a Federation spec. And so what Google's trying to do, just to be very clear, is that Google is trying to get federation between the various Google services and other people's services, which is fine. But they're really using a kind of open ID model when they say federation. So they're imagining like an OAuth, they're imagining these different domains. They're imagining a very, for lack of a better, different centralized web services talking to each other. So it would be good if you reviewed that spec. I can also give it a quick review, and brought up the point that, this is a very particular definition of federation, and that maybe, that may not, that you maybe want some slightly more extensive stuff for people with, for example, self-sovereign keys, where there's not, the main current federation is really just how do I map two delivery services and two authentication services together. They're not imagining everyone is their own delivery service and everyone is their own authentication service, which is the way, maybe the best way to think about peer-to-peer. Okay?
Cool. Awesome.
I'll throw that just in case people aren't on the mailing list. I'll throw that spec into the draft.
Great, thanks. Just a quick, is anyone from you guys going to come to the Swarm Summit?
The what?
Swarm Summit.
It's really soon. I thought about it. I'm a little bit overbooked right now, but maybe let me see. When was it? It was October. Not October. It was like next.
No, in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
23rd till 25th.
I can try. I can try. I can also try to ask Prasad to come. I'll talk to him tomorrow about it. He's out of office today, but
Okay, cool. Because I think that would be great to get some more overlap between the mixnet and Swarm stuff. And
Yeah. I mean,
If it's
yeah.
possible.
I mean, I'll so if the goal is the mixnet stuff, then Prasad he's an MLS guy. He's not really a mixnet guy.
oh, okay.
But I could definitely ask. Yeah, let me think about who would be the best. Either me or I'll ask the other NIM people if one person can make it over to Madrid. Okay.
Awesome. Cool. And then are you guys in the Riot, or do you have a mailing list, or like where do you usually sort of?
Yeah,
like
we're still working on stuff. We're still pretty early stages, so we're still doing so we just have kind of like a private Riot channel that we're using. But if we can make one that we all jump in, or we could jump in your channel. What was your Riot channel again?
So we have it's the one hosted by Web3. I'll send a.
Just if you could put the link in the Zoom chat, then we can.
Yeah, sure.
I'll send it to all the NIM people and see if they can join. I think with Anya and everyone, again, we're having some user experience issues with Riot, but we'll try our best to join. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. We also have status protocol for people who want to join, but that's one. But I think
let's see if we get the team to use
more
Riot.
status stable.
You can go to status in the future.
Yeah.
One baby steps, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have a Swarm. I don't know what this one is. All right, cool. Oh, it's the paper.
Guys, I put the network paper for in case you're interested, because that contains a kind of basic scheme for message incentivization for relaying nodes. I don't know if this is relevant to you, but it also contains kind of the basis for PSS routing, and just in case you're interested.
All right. Cool. Do people want to go through the layers briefly, and I guess with an eye towards sort of figure out outside of the data sync stuff what we think is sort of the first component, or what you will, that sort of we will ship.
Sure, sounds good.
Now I turn on.
So there's a document.
Back to business.
All right, enjoy. All right.
Explain it to my
Are you sure
So
you're gonna go to
maybe I should listen.
What the fuck is that?
Well, I mean, he's just.
We don't have any plans on.
I know, and Leroy's going to show up and like.
Just take it to shower with you. Just take it to shower.
Okay.
It's off, right? Like it's fun. And you can hear if they start talking.
I don't know. It's a bit.
Your comments go first.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, where do we want to start? Where do we want to start in it? Do we want to start closer to the data sync layer? The document starts from the bottom.
Yeah, maybe we can go through sort of the different sort of.
We can go through it at a high level too. So
I think just walk
Yeah,
through it line by line is best.
Okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're still proposing using the P2P for the transport. I know Cats and Post uses something else, but I'm not really a fan of bespoke, networking.
To be clear, we're not dead set on Cats and Post. We were discussing dropping the code base. It's all we're discussing. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't actually know the pros and cons. I mostly objected to some things in the packet format, not really to the transport layer. But in general, people around here like libp2p, and we can actually get work done on it fairly easily because we have people that do that. So, okay. So some of these, so most of the stuff in this libp2p section is about future concerns. What stuff that would happen in, so talking about quick and post-quantum stuff. So this is not really stuff that needs to be worried about too much right now. All right, so the second part is just talking about actually the mixnet itself. So it generally breaks down into, we have to have some sort of PKI. We have to have some kind of actual mixing thing with its packet format, and we have to have some cover traffic. So in the the PKI, we have, there's a few research issues on stuff that we can do in the future. So for sorting things like how to sort the relays into strata based on, without having to do anything, So some of this is fairly straightforward. Some of it, like there's an MPC that's a little trickier. But the big question here is where do we actually keep the list of all the nodes? And the obvious thing I think is just to register them all as accounts on some blockchain, because this is a thing we can do relatively straightforward in a relatively straightforward way. As there's another issue that I guess I should add here on dealing with nodes being offline or whatever, so sort of availability. Maybe I'll just go ahead and add that here. Where I'll go ahead and add a note on that. Maybe I'm not sure if I spelled that right.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm going to put Fatima's name there because she brought it up most recently. All right. So then there's an issue of sort of estimating relay capacity, so in the PKI, one part of that is estimating relay capacity. We have ideas for this. They're a little subtle, but I'll be writing up more on that this month, hopefully. And I can, if anybody's interested, if you look at the Web3 messaging incentives directory, I think I moved it to a subdirectory. There's a file there that talks about our ideas, about the ideas in more detail. All right, so okay, so one of the things to point out about this document, one of the main things that, since it was Sebastian's concern, one of the main things I was trying to do is to, in the beginning of each section, I'm trying to name what other sections I think it's going to be using. It makes some kind of notes about which pieces are using which other things. And so the mixing part, because that's the one that I know the most about, and it's actually quite straightforward from the literature, I listed sort of everything, it's probably in more detail than it needs to be for this. So in each of these sections, there's something about about other future work that we ought to be doing on this after getting some kind of basic thing working. So one thing that's a little bit different from cats in post, I still think we should enforce message delays deterministically by sampling at the relays using, this makes it harder to have multiple tiers of service, but it seems cleaner in a lot of ways, and multiple tiers of service causes a lot of problems, and probably when you want multiple tiers of service, you probably want multiple packet sizes anyway. So I don't know, that's a conversation we can keep having, but I just put that in because I still think it's the right way to do things. Okay. So yeah, so there's some small comments on serve unwinding and things like that. Okay, some notes on if we want to try and do this payment channel thing that Validity Labs comes up with, that's going to require a big security proof, but we can, at some point, we can look at that. We started talking to Stephanie Roos and other people, but I don't know. So far, we've not really, so she does payment channels sometimes, but we haven't gotten any of the people that are big into payment channels interested, and I'm not sure how many of them really are take this kind of stuff, the security proofs, that seriously anyway. So we may need to, what may be the right thing to do there is to redo a security proof for the packet format, and then we'll know it enough to try and just do a security proof for Robert's scheme ourselves. I'm not sure. So as far as the cover traffic, generally everybody wants to copy, wants to take Anya's ideas here. we don't have, I guess there's never been any non-simulation security arguments to appear for that stuff, but fine. So that's just listed under possible things. All right, so that's, okay, so that was more just the mixnet itself. So then there's, above that, there was what, I didn't really have a good name for it. I was just calling it sort of the interface to the mixnet. So these are sort of things that you wouldn't really use a mixnet without. So the first of them is, of course, is some sort of MLS, some sort of transport layer crypto. This is essential for when you use SERBs, because you probably, when you pass through, pass across the SERB boundary. I mean, it depends how you use the SERBs, but if you want the most flexible strategy of using them, then you need something here. And you probably want it anyway. Then there's something about having some kind of messaging queue. Of course, Lupix has this, and it's quite simple, and that's fine. There's more complicated things we can do with erasure coding to, which sounds more, I should have explicitly labeled that as future work probably, but anyway.
Can I ask a question on the, so when we say MLS and stuff, like, is there a reason, like you could swap in double ratchet and it would—
Double ratchet's fine. Yeah, I should actually have explicitly said that.
So it's more like conversation security, and MLS is more like a better double ratchet.
No, it's
now we can use
MLS is no different from
yeah, exactly. I just want to make sure that there's nothing specific in the tree crypto, something that the sub stuff uses.
Yeah, I can change that and be explicit about it. So the advantage for MLS is that we can do some sort of rooms in the mixnet where there's nodes that store.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And for that, you actually want the MLS at this layer. However, if it's not ready or something else, we just use double ratchet and we have person-to-person communication, and it's fine. Or use some other thing. It's just that if MLS is en route, then it's nice to.
Absolutely. I'm just mostly from an architectural point of view, that is sort of, we keep them as pluggable stuff, and then
this one, this one's not critical. We can just take a double ratchet implementation and shove it in, and it'll be fine. Or double ratchet with sender keys or something would be fine. So these message queues thing, I think there's something very simple we can do here initially and in the future, and we can make much better use of the fixed packet sizes by using erasure coding, and that's not overly complicated. We have to basically, we have to have somebody do it. So then there's the problem of sort of SERB distribution. There's a few different strategies. I guess I'm keeping that one somewhat thin. And then for the messaging store and forwarding part, that's a big write-up, a big part of this previous write-up I have on things. And there's a few components of this. You need some kind of authentication libraries, which is implementing some cryptographic protocols, mostly using pairings. There's some sort of, but that again, that depends on how you want to use it. There's simpler places to start with that. For doing these store and forwarding, there's some kind of processing of registering and tracking these registrations, and then there's some kind of notion. Okay, and then aside from that, aside from these stored forwarding parts, there's a similar thing which actually manages rooms, and then we need to have, if you have some kind of multi-room thing. And then I guess that's in what I call store and forwarding. And then you need some abstract notion of contacts that sort of pulls together the different threads from whatever MLS wants from a contacts system and whatever the room scheme wants from a contact system. Okay, and then above that, we have the data sync layer where I started to not know what I was talking about so much.
I think there's some overlap as well with the data sync. The problems we're looking at for data sync and the things that I mentioned under free. Also, when it comes to things like, because we're building for sort of mobile and resource-restricted devices, and that means finding ways of dealing with sort of offline devices and so on, which points to something like Swarm and using feeds and these types of things. So I think that that's something we can. I mean, that's kind of what we're working on, and I think like our current setup, right? Like current plan is to get the sort of data sync in and then have it into the app, and then it will be sort of on top of essentially double ratchet, like a decentralized form of double ratchet that doesn't sort of require any central server where you upload prekeys or whatever. And then right now it's on top of Whisper, but my thinking is that as soon as we have sort of a more solid proof of concept on the layer below free, so that's essentially 1 and 2, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, 1 is already there, but 1, 2, then we can just plug it in. And then a lot of the 3 and 4 should be taken care of. Of course, there's lots of consideration when it comes to subs and these other things, but I think we can at least get something end-to-end going. At least that's my current understanding.
Right.
I just have three quick comments upon hearing that exposition. So the third comment is, so lib peer-to-peer is just a broadcast, but it can go over TCP/IP or whatever. And so in terms of stuff going kind of into I mean, there is this like design decision about the free routing versus stratified routing mix, which Claudia can go more deeply in if people want to have that discussion, but we don't have to have it right now because we've been on the phone a while.
I think in the end, the stratified doesn't make, it doesn't really cost us anything to go with stratified. There's a few places where we need to do more work, but it's fun work. So
I think you could go with either. You get a little bit, you definitely get privacy benefits from using stratified, and all that means is that the lib peer-to-peer bit, as long as lib peer-to-peer can like ship TCP/IP packets around, totally fine. So, and if it's broadcast them, that's fine. We could broadcast at endpoints and entry points. And the only reason why I said there's a stratified versus free routing diff is because if you want the relays to be broadcasting, then that's not stratified. If you want the relays to be set at some level, then you can't do like a total.
libp2p is not actually broadcast. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it does this gossip stuff. But
if it's doing gossip's fine. We just need to sort of say gossip with the next guy down the path, not with everyone.
You can tell it to open. You tell it to. The way in which I imagine you'd use it is you tell it open specific connections, and you queue up a bunch of stuff for one particular node, and you send it when you have it or when it seems appropriate. I mean, if you've got too many nodes in the next strata, but we won't hit that for a long time. Run into with libp2p. What we're running into with Polkadot is we've got too many. You don't want to be on protocol labs. You want to network. You need to be running your own libp2p network.
That's fine. That's totally fine. We just want to make sure we weren't being forced to do broadcast at every hop, basically.
No, I think that would be silly.
That's our only concern. Some hops can broadcast, other hops can do other things as long as we can get TCP/IP channels directed occasionally between relays. Between relays, we have to actually set that up. That's the stratified versus free routing diff. The second thing is in terms of serve design. I think that's a long conversation. Your serve modifications, I think, are pretty sensible and fairly minor. I don't know. I don't think there's gonna be a huge pushback. It might be useful to have George or Ian Goldberg on the call. I know they've been talking about changing Sphinx a while, but I don't know if they made any progress. But good to. It's good not to have too many radically different Sphinx libraries around. So let's just, I think we box that and we'll do it. We'll do just an email thing and we take that.
The thing I don't like about the cats and posts one is it almost makes this frigging language out of the thing, which has clearly gone too far.
We don't. Yeah. But again, we're not bound to that design. I think the question is, what Sphinx design do we need? And then is that make sure we're not totally doing anything that's crazy. So I think, but that's not that's a deep Sphinx dive, which we shouldn't do on this call. That should be between the according to the people who are using Sphinx, just use it like Lightning Labs use it. It's perfectly fine encrypted data packet. It gives you the next hop. That's all you need to know. Possibly serve stuff. So I don't think for people on this call you need to like deep dive into the crypto Sphinx now. Yeah, we should deep dive on crypto Sphinx on another call. The third thing, okay, in terms of the dummy traffic stuff, which I think Anya should be able to discuss next call. Anya is not certain. So, again, there's the loop messages, right? That's one. And there's the loop messages generated by the effectively the relays. And there's also these drop messages. And Anya is kind of on... there was never any real clear proof that the drop messages are necessary.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, good.
So it's not really it's just kind of thrown in the Loopix paper because there was the feeling they were necessary, but they've thought about it a bit more. They're not really sure, but there's not like, really.
The ones that are really necessary are the loops.
What? Yeah, the loops are the ones that are really, so actually this is a Claudia sort of thing. So
sure. Okay.
So Claudia just confirmed the ones that are really necessary, the loops, the drop messages, like don't worry about those too much.
They kind of added them for some corner cases in their model, but it's not clear that they're really essential. And they introduce some complexity. So they are basically they are not included in the cat sample implementation.
So Jeff, I don't know if you've thought about this, Claudia. So Jeff has been putting forward. He wants to use some sort of forward error correcting code. You want to use erasure coding? Can you has people done that before with?
Yeah, I think we had some papers about that from 2007.
I don't know. Can you tell me?
Yeah, I know, but it was not for Mixnet. It was for something else. But
the idea is very simple. You have packets.
I know erasure codes. I mean, you basically split. You have like some redundancy. You split n messages into a bigger m messages, and then a threshold of them are necessary. Like any t. Out of those m messages are sufficient to reconstruct.
Yeah, the point is simply that
file, and therefore you can tolerate loss.
But my question is that why you want them, Jeff?
Harry,
sorry guys to interrupt.
Harry, it wouldn't impact the security much at all, I think, because the point of the erasure code is that you have fixed size packets. So all it's there for is to maximally utilize the packet when you have a body of lower priority data.
So let's take that conversation offline, but I think we should have it. The last little thing I just want to point out was the MLS topic. In MLS, just to be very clear, the group state, you have this group state. That group state is your crypto for the room. So you shouldn't be able to, I don't know how you guys currently do rooms, but the way to think about MLS in rooms is that the room has a key. That's a group key for the whole room. You update that key when new people add to the room. So you shouldn't be able to, like the MLS's concept of rooms is purely cryptographic, and everyone is in a room is defined by a key, which does a contribution to the group state of the key. So if you can map that to what you guys currently do, that's great. The MLS is doing nothing else but that. Okay, just to be clear there. Because I think it was a little bit, okay. Cool.
The only problem, sorry, continue.
Sorry to interrupt. I just so we were almost finishing up. I just wanted to check sort of out of these sort of parts, what is the first sort of milestone outside of the data sync stuff on the Mixnet side? Like, what is the first component that we like can agree on that this is the way it should look like and have like some specification around?
Oh, sorry, from the Mixnet stuff. I have been wanting to get my packet format thing finished for a while. The Cast and Post one has one that can be, theirs could be used. The two.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is like if we can break this down a bit. So it's because there's lots of sort of technical details and considerations at each of these components. So
the two critical things to make it work is you need a PKI, and you don't actually have to have the cover traffic. That can wait, but you need the mixing and you need the PKI. And the PKI is basically a bunch of accounts on a blockchain. So we could try and implement that on Substrate or on something else, implement some kind of very simple PKI and make a packet format work with it. I've been wanting to do that for a while, just haven't found the time.
Harry, what do you think things look like from your point of view? Like which things sort of this is definitely the way it's going to be. And then that's something where we could have multiple clients around. So we could have one in Go, one in Rust, and probably one in Nim or whatever, and just sort of have it sort of, well, here's the specification.
Yeah, I think Jeff's concept is fine. I think, making sure, writing, I mean, Claudia just write, if things that people should agree on is to use the same Sphinx packet format. Like, okay, we don't agree on that where the networks won't talk to each other.
Size.
The same packet size, and to agree on a way to like store the PKI so everyone can access it. Once you have that, you're kind of in a decent shape, and then we can twiddle our fingers on the details of a lot of this stuff. So I basically agree with Jeff, but I don't know if we actually have agreement on those three things. I think maybe deep dive on those.
So maybe that's a good. Because I've heard this sort of packet format stuff has come up a few times, and the question of redoing the security proofs, and I think there was some question with respect to Validity Labs design that
That's
might need
something much more complicated. Yeah.
So I think maybe is that a good place to start in terms of some kind of goal for that kind of thing, or is PKI a better start? Just like picking something where it's like self-contained and we can reach agreement on a time frame of. Yeah, I don't know, reasonable time frame.
I think we should all agree to use the Sphinx packet format. I think that's like the baseline thing.
Not a well-defined term, but yes.
Yeah, and then the only thing that's why I said we need to take it a little bit offline. If you want to make any modifications to that packet format, which I think you have a few minor ones you want to make, Jeff, we need to run that by George, Claude, like the people who make the Sphinx packet format.
Oh, well, good luck getting George's time on that.
He's fine. We saw him.
I think we can get an afternoon to run an idea for him.
Yeah, he has expressed interest in packet format changes to Sphinx. I mean, he's busy, but he's not totally gone.
He will not work on it for a month, but he can listen to it for an afternoon.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's what I think nailing the Sphinx packet format down and the PKI is the two things we should agree on. I'm totally happy storing a PKI in a blockchain. Choose whatever freaking blockchain you want, guys. Someone just needs to draft out how they think that will work a bit. I don't think it's particularly hard.
No.
If we agree on those things, then we can play with incentive schemes and play with routing and play with all the other variables.
All right, cool. So let's bring that up in the next call as well when Validity Labs will be here. As well, I don't know, does anyone want to sort of write up a proposal for either the minor changes or the PKI stuff?
Yeah, I can try and write up something on this. I can try and write up something on the packet format, I guess. Yeah, I should do that.
All right, cool. All right, is there anything else people want to talk about before we finish the call?
I guess, nope, I think that's it.
All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for joining.